Hey everyone, this is Kenny Coins with Marathon Money. I'm with Kenta Aratani. Kenta is in the forex space. Um, he's a trader. He seems to, and he also lives out in Tokyo, someplace I really want to be. Um, want to experience that. I've seen so many other people enjoy living out there. Um, but I was able to get him on the show. Met him through LinkedIn. He's really a cool guy. So, Kenta, um, tell me what got you into everything you're doing now, Forex. I know you did a stint at, do you still work at JP Morgan?
I don't.
Okay. I know you used to work at JP Morgan doing the kind of the same thing. Please start us
Yeah.
off.
Um, Thanks for the introduction. Thanks for getting my name right. Um, so, as Kenny mentioned, as you mentioned, I'm living in Tokyo right now. I've been here for about 11 years. And right now, I'm actually working on my own startup within the entire fintech ecosystem here. But most recently, I was at JP Morgan Tokyo, working as a rates and FX trader. Um, and my entire professional career has been, in similar spaces, right? I started off at AIG, American insurance company, doing like very nerdy stuff, catastrophe modeling, actuarial stuff, underwriting. I moved over to Mizuho, a local bank, to do some government bond trading. And then I pretty much made a lateral shift over to JP Morgan.
So, like, how did you get into what piqued your interest, or how did you get into like Forex trading?
Um, I was never really a people's person. It's kind of a weird way to put it, but I was very quancy. I was very logic oriented, and I don't know. Maybe it's just in Japan, but these aren't like the greatest quality to make like a great consultant or like a salesperson. Um, but because I was good at what I liked, which is essentially just numbers, and I also had the personality of wanting to sort of like reiterate and go through like the trial and error cycle as quickly as possible. I just thought trading was like right choice for me.
So, how did you build the formula to become successful in trading?
It's a good question. I don't really think, like I'm not like the most successful trader by a long shot. I've only been in the industry for what, like 6 years or something like that. And I think for a very low volatility period for the Japanese economy, I think I did well. But I think it's just finding the right product, finding your niche, and sort of coming up with a strategy systematically to generate like a consistent alpha is how I sort of approached it.
So, what was the highest percentage like you earned in a day, percentage wise?
Percentage wise in a day, I guess this is just for myself, but probably maybe like 30%, 40% of the capital that I invested, at least for like a few trades that I did that day.
Wow. Now that I looked over some of your stuff on LinkedIn. You got your own company, correct?
Yeah.
Um, what is like starting that, and what is like starting that?
Um, Honestly, it's hard. It's super tough. Startups in general are obviously hard, but finance or fintech in Japan is extremely regulated. It's very overpopulated with existing players. Um, you know, you're probably going to get a few chances to interview a few people from Japan, but on the occasion, you probably hear that Japan is very overbanked. It's not underbanked. It's not unbanked. It's overbanked, right? So that
Why do you
makes
think is that? Is it
um
because it's a lot easier to get into?
no. All these overbanked guys or players are domestic financial institutions. So I think Japan currently has what, somewhere around 400 financial institutions that actually will provide you like some sort of a banking service to you.
Wow. Like, if it's so regulated, why is there so many?
So all of these guys have been around for a very like historical part of Japan's like economic development. Pre the bubble era. In the late '80s, early '90s, and the regulation came afterwards. The traditional innovation cycle in Japan, at least to my knowledge, um, was primarily consumer driven. It wasn't really like regulated in that certain direction. Um, Everything just happened, and then the regulation came afterward, and it just stuck around.
Wow. Wow. So tell me more about your company. What are you doing?
Trying to solve a very Japan specific problem. It's in the payment space, and Japan is still very well. I mean, some people might disagree, but it's still very cash dominant. It does accept cashless payments. Most merchants will. Um, and most people have a smartphone, most people have a credit card, but the actual cashless payments ratio, in terms of the amount of consumption expenditures, is probably less than 50%.
Wow.
So a little more than 50% of all transactions, at least in terms of the transacted volume or the amount, is still cash based. And I'm sort of trying to introduce or carve out a niche space so that I can help the primarily like cash driven consumers make that smooth transition over into the cashless or more digital space.
Why do you think they haven't really, because most of the US you can say is about 75-80% cashless. Everybody's using their credit card, everybody's using Apple Pay or some type of phone pay.
Hmm.
Um, why do you think Japan's having a hard time adapting to that?
I would say it's because Japan never really had a problem with cash or the cash infrastructure. Japan is, it's an extremely safe country. Even if you have like, I don't know, maybe a few $1,000 on you, you're never going to get robbed. Even if you lose your wallet, you're going to get it back with the full amount, most likely. Um, and the cash infrastructure, I mentioned earlier the number of like financial institutions, but that's also indicative of the number of like ATMs that are out there where you can, probably walk maybe at most 5 minutes to find the next ATM, make a withdrawal from your bank account, cash. And the problem that cashless historically tried to solve, which is primarily for the unbanked or the underbanked, just never existed in Japan. So there wasn't as much of an incentive. And there's a few other reasons in addition to that, like how expensive it is to top up your account using the traditional interbank settlement system. Um, so there are like structural headwinds.
So you've been doing this what for 4 years on your own?
No, actually, the current company that I'm working on, I've only been doing for about a year.
Okay. Hey man, so what do you do on your everyday basis, man? What is your this entrepreneur road looks like for you? Like, are you still creating your success? Are you still creating your success like daily routine?
Um, uh, Sorry, it's a good question. I actually don't know what the right answer to that is, but it's sort of been like the similar story, like day in, day out. I mean, the reason I got into finance, like traditional finance, like, like trading and things like that, was to sort of like build up enough of my own personal reserves so that I can actually, like focus on, something that of my own, something personal, like a problem that I wanted to solve. So obviously, I don't have the stability of the pay that I used to get from guys like JP Morgan, but it is rewarding in the sense that you get to actually focus solely on what you're passionate about or the problem that you're really looking to solve. So I do everything. I do everything from prototyping a new idea, pitching it to investors, to speaking to the regional government to see if we can collaborate in some sort of angle. Um, and yeah, that's
All right.
that's been my day to day.
Have you got people that are receptive to your idea?
Yeah, we do.
That's good. That's good. W- Man, what is your lifestyle like out there in Japan? It's like I heard about like the work environment,
Mm.
how everyday work life is and how the nightlife is and how, but I want to hear from somebody that's like who was working for JP Morgan out in Tokyo, and what was the work hours like? What was after work hours like? What was the weekends like? I don't know. Like I would like to learn how like the structure works out there.
Mm. So I guess I'll start off a few years back when I actually used to work for JP Morgan. But so I was trading a bunch of products, right? Yen rates in general, short term government bonds. As you mentioned, I was also doing some dollar yen trades, and a lot of the market making took place in London hours and the US hours as well. Just because there was an opportunity there from like overseas investors. Um, so very often I would just get calls, maybe like 1 or 2, 3 a.m. in the morning to see if the price was still intact. Um, and then that was pretty much just like 5 days of the week, and wasn't as bad as I sort of make it out to be. I got around to the gym fairly often, maybe like twice a week. Got to grab some beers with my buddies, maybe every other week. Weekends, pretty much just catching up on my sleep. And then, yeah, I mean, just, I don't know, going out for like a bike ride or something like that.
And so, like, do you read? What do you do that like makes you better? What's like the thing that is like, oh, this is what I'm doing now to get my business up and going?
Um, yeah, I don't really read, but there's a bunch of stuff that I've always been interested in, but never really had the time or money to like sort of like invest into. So, I've already sort of like come up with like a fixed allocation of how to spend my time. Um, let's say it's like 80% my current business. The rest 20% I would split up evenly across like, like working out or some other field, maybe within like algorithms or like LLMs and things like that. That'll sort of like help me think outside of fintech. Like let me forget about finance for a second. Let me forget about fintech. Let me forget about my company, and sort of just like forcibly reset my mind is something that I really try to focus on.
Man, that's a great way to distract yourself. I think there's a lot of people out there who's going down your same road that they don't do that as 100% their company. I do you
Right.
think that doing that 80-20 split, do you think that helps you a lot?
Absolutely. I mean, I can't imagine myself being able to dedicate 100% or like everything I have to like a single thought because, thinking outside of the box and being creative is part of startup. And I can't really do that without like a moment of, disruption.
So, um now you was you were fixed. you was a forex trader, fixed income
Mhm.
at JP Morgan. You have your own thing now. What is like the next 12 months look like for you?
The next 12 months, one obvious thing is going to be a roadshow throughout Japan to collaborate with different regional authorities. Could be the regional government, or it could be like a regional politician. Um, getting the basic traction, right, and doing the entire product market fit cycle. Reiterate as quickly as possible, and yeah, I mean, I already have a few investors who might be interested in my idea. All I'm looking to do is just gather enough traction to get the valuation that I want. So that's primarily what my 12 months is going to look like.
You need what are you looking for to increase that valuation that you want?
Um, so I mean, it's probably going to be like a similar story across the board for any startup, but it's going to be traction. It doesn't. I mean, if you're able to sort of like do like a net profit, that's amazing. Uh, but that's usually never the case in the fintech industry,
Mhm.
just because there's so many like regulations involved, and there's a lot of like backwards engineering involved in terms of how to do a proper proof of concept without violating any, you know,
Laws.
laws or
Yeah.
regulations and getting the FSA upset.
Yeah.
Um,
It seems like it's a lot more strict out there for you guys. So getting traction in Japan seems more difficult. Eh, Would you say so?
Possibly. I've actually never tried to start a company or like a service of my own in the States. So I really don't know. But based off of my friends who are serial entrepreneurs, have been in Silicon Valley, have already exited their startups, tried to come to Japan and do the same thing, but it usually never works.
Wow. Wow. That's kind of like, and what's can I get your opinion why it didn't work? Like your own theory?
Um, oh man, that could be like a 3-hour conversation on its own. But Japan, and again, this is just my opinion, right? Japan is very like segmented, horizontally, vertically, um, and I'm not just talking about like the government or like the politicians, right? Like I'm talking about the consumer market. Um, we have the aging population. Well, I mean, this is sort of like a similar story altogether, but the aging population, I think our average population age is probably around like 51 or 52 right now. But um, the people who actually have the most financial power in Japan are the senior populations, right? In their 60s and above. These people are very content with whatever they have, or whatever they have going on in their lives, or they have already sort of fixed their life, day-to-day life routines, and they don't really conform to anything new. So I think what a lot of people do wrong is they don't spend enough time doing like market research, like face-to-face market research to identify the correct targets. And yeah, I mean that's usually what goes wrong for a lot of these people.
So you're saying basically because the average age range is between like 50 and 60, am I correct? And those people are usually content with their lifestyle. That leads me to think it's like, doesn't the younger generation have opportunities to gain wealth quicker? Because we're in a new digital age.
Yes. Yes, I mean, you're definitely onto something there, but that's normally how everyone else or all of your competition is going to think as well. So let's say you've already like ruled out half of Japan's population for like target consumers or target customers of your service. everyone else is trying to take a slice of the pie from the rest 50%, right? So there's a lot of competition there. There's a lot of companies here who are very cash rich and maybe not exactly like have the right risk appetite, but they're willing to use their money or invest it in the right way to sort of like either push you out of the game or buy you out or yeah, I mean, you just need to be very like strategical.
So what I'm gathering here, you know a lot about your space, and you know all the pitfalls from your friends or people that you have seen or companies that have been successful in other countries that have moved over here and not successful here. If you don't mind sharing,
Mhm.
what are you going to do differently that's
Um,
going to keep you from almost essentially ending the same way?
so I was actually having a conversation about this with a VC. I wasn't really like speaking to them to get an investment, but earlier today I was speaking to a VC and we were talking about something very similar. Um, it really depends on which industry that you want to get in, but like I said, payments in Japan is extremely overpopulated, and coming in just with I don't know like a few $1 million to come up with a brand new payment service. And for the record, there are probably around like 40 or 50 different types of payment styles in Japan or payment services. You mentioned earlier like the credit cards, the Apple Pays, the Google Pays. Additionally, we have a bunch of domestic products who serve the same exact purpose. Um, so going back to the identifying or clarifying who your target is, I'm going to try and carve out a very niche portion of the population that are still primarily cash driven, um, find a common pain point amongst them, and try to solve that specific problem in order to make them my customers that I can actually offer via, whether it be like an API or something like that, to the existing players so that we can benefit mutually. So if to sort of like wrap that up, you probably don't want to come into the fintech space in Japan and sort of like look to hit like a grand slam home run on your own at least. You probably want to find like the partners that you strategically want to work with, the ones you can find support from, and also provide support to them in one way or another, and just come up with like a mid to long term strategy in order to work together.
Okay, now I understand all that. So I think one last question, man. What do you see yourself being 10 years from now?
10 years from now, there's actually two things that I would want to do. I probably want to be obviously trading my own funds, whether that be through like private means or like maybe like a hedge fund, or actually, there's a specific area of computer science that I'm looking to go into in terms of research. So hopefully, I'll have the startup that I'm currently working on at a good stage by then, and focus on the next thing that I'd be interested in.
Man, I hope you make this thing work. You know what I mean? Because it seems like you do know where all the pitfalls. You do know a lot about what your industry and what you're doing, and you've seen other people come in and they failed, and you're obviously learning from them. So I hope this works out well. I'll definitely be keeping up with you. When I do come to Tokyo, I hope we can, meet face to face, have another one of these, and see where you're at. Um, Anything else you want to say before we get off?
Um, yeah, I guess just to sort of like talk Japan up a little bit. Japan is definitely the place to be. at least mid to long term. Maybe not super long term, but Asia, especially Japan, is sort of in a growth cycle right now, and it's got a ton of problems that needs to be fixed, right? So the government is extremely supportive of foreign companies, foreign startups coming in, doing their own thing, make some money, exit out, and it's really the place to be. But you really kind of need to understand, whether it's the right fit for you. So if anyone has any questions, I probably won't be able to answer all the questions, but I'd be more than happy to make introductions, etc. So just let me know, and I'd be more than happy to help.
Man, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for coming. Kenta, it was nice talking to you.
Yeah, nice talking to you too.
I appreciate everybody for watching and listening. This is Marathon Money. Thank you.